Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October agenda briefing session. And noting the new start time of 4 p.m. So, welcome, councillors, staff, and members of the community that are here in the gallery. Disclaimer: the agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item on the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the lands, water and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders and emerging elders, both past and present. Records of apologies and leave of absence. I have no apologies. All councillors are present and there is no leave of absence. Declarations of members and officers' personal interest. I've received one from Councillor Coleman in relation an impartiality interest in relation to item 7.3.1. Councillors, are there any other declarations? Staff? No. Deputations is nil. We'll now move into the officers' reports. We'll move to the Chief Executive Officer's reports 5.1.1, which is to deal with council recess and meeting schedules. Councillors, are there any questions? Neil? I'll move into item 5.1.2, which is appointments to council committees, advisory groups and delegate committees for 2025 through to 2027. Any questions, councillors? I'll move into item 5.1.3, which is the lease agreement for the Leschenault Sporting Association. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, just in reference to all leases, really, not just this one. I wondered if there's going to be a change in the costs to organisations for the use of these buildings to make it more sustainable for ratepayers. At the moment, I think we only do a gold dollar coin. Isn't it $1, I think?
Through to Council Governance.
Through the Shire President, we can bring back the community lease policy to council at any time. Perhaps it requires a workshop with council at Concept Forum before it's produced in an agenda. But at the moment, the community lease policy says $1 per year, but that can certainly be adjusted at council's discretion.
Thank you for that. I guess if we can request that to come to council at some point, then please.
I just have a question in relation to, in the lease, in relation to the inspection of the premises and completing the property condition report. So, a couple of questions. Firstly, how long will this inspection take? Because I'm assuming it's going to hold up the lease. And my second question is, what occurs if there's significant work that's identified through this inspection process? Will this hold up the lease arrangements moving forward?
Through the Shire President. At the time of writing the report, we hadn't scheduled the inspection. However, I believe that's been scheduled now, and the Environmental Health team are going to assist with that, as they also are required to do a public health inspection of the building as well, because it's open to the public. In terms of any issues that come up in maintenance, there is a small maintenance budget allocated to the LSA, and that can be negotiated with and between officers and the lessee. If they're uncomfortable signing lease, I don't imagine there would be. I've been in the building recently, and it's in pretty good order. But we do maintenance regularly there anyway. I don't think it's going to hold it up. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, councillors? Councillor Caboni?
So I note that the lease agreement's going for 3 years and so many months. But we don't offer an option of another 5 years, so it doesn't have to come back to council, that it can be done by delegated authority?
Through the Shire President, so this lease agreement is tied to the loan arrangement, and officers felt that in tying it to the loan arrangement, then it should probably come back to council for review at the end of that term, rather than renewal.
Any other questions, councillors? No, thank you. I'll move on to item 5.1.4, which is the council plan quarterly report, which is our first quarterly report for our council plan, quarter 1, 25 through to 26. Do we have any questions, councillors?
Yes, Madam President, I did send through the CEO just to check when the council plan and service plan became into the reform as passed instead of the strategic community plan and the corporate business plan, please. When were they passed into the reform?
Thank you, Councillor Coleman, and I am in receipt of your email. That reform process, the regulations haven't come through as yet, but our documentation is compliant. The strategic community plan and the corporate business plan are incorporated into our renamed council plan and address all of the requirements of the two plans.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No, thank you. Infrastructure services, 5.2 is nil. I'll move into sustainable development. This is item 5.3.1, which is the proposed naming of public open space at Meadowviews Estate, Harvey. Are there any questions, councillors? No. I'll move into corporate services 5.4, which is 5.4.1, payments for September 2025. I know that some have been emailed through to staff already. Just a reminder that we CC the CEO in those emails so that she's aware. Are there any questions, councillors? Further questions? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you. So we will get a response through to all councillors from the emails sent through, rather than table them here and now?
The questions that have been sent through you, Madam President, I do have a couple of those, the responses. However, half of those we're still waiting on additional staff feeding that information through. So once we have those, we'll send them out to all councillors.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, 5.5, which is community and lifestyle, is nil. Point 6, which is the notice of motion. Councillor Coleman has put forward a notice of motion for the ordinary council meeting. Are there any questions in relation to that one, councillors? No? At the ordinary council meeting, yes. Yep, next week. If you want to send that wording through, Councillor Caboni, so we get that right for next week? That's correct, CEO? Yep. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of items that we need to go behind closed doors. If there are any questions in relation to those particular items, do I have any questions? Councillor Caboni? Okay, we will now move behind closed doors. So thank you, guests we have in the gallery. Thank you. All good? All righty, welcome back, everybody. Being no more further questions, I thank everyone for their attendance and I declare the October agenda briefing session closed. Thank you.